We're really happy to have our speakers with us today. Our first speaker is Joe Logica from KPMG. Joe is a director at KPMG, where he works to develop and deliver Xbrl activities for the firm. He leads teams and works directly with clients on their Xbrl. Joe also focuses on the application of technology in business processes and processes in connection with Sarbanes-Oxley. Our second speaker today is Pranav Ghai. Pranav is the co-founder of CalcBench. Pranav is an analytics professional. He's built expert systems to return what we're calling actionable ideas. Most of Pranav's professional career has been in financial services. He spent time at Morgan Stanley, at ITG, and he is also a contributing member to the Microsoft Technical Computing Customer Advisory Board. So we're really pleased to have both of them with us today. I'm going to follow up at the end of the presentation with a brief overview of some other tools that you may want to have access to that can help you get better at analyzing corporate financials. So with that, I'm going to turn over first to Joe Logica.
Thank you, Michelle, and welcome everybody to today's webinar. Thank you very much for, can you hear me?
Okay, I'm not sure if we lost Joe's audio. But Joe, you may be speaking, you may be on, oh, there you go, Joe, great.
Okay, fantastic. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. If you could speak a little closer to the mic just to make sure everyone can hear, that would be great.
Great, I'll do that. And if at any time I say something where you might not catch, feel free to shoot me something in the chat or shoot it over to Michelle, and I'll be happy to repeat it. So thank you, Michelle, for kicking us off today, and thank you, everyone, for participating in this. We hope that, that we can help you with Xbrl and add some value to the activities that you're currently underway with tagging of your financial statements. I spend a lot of time talking with companies out there, and one of the comments that typically comes back to me is, I have to do all this work for Xbrl, and nobody seems to be using it. Well, I think that's kind of a mistaken judgment there, that there are a lot of companies that are using Xbrl data, maybe not fully to the extent that we would like them to, but there are a lot of opportunities currently to use the Xbrl data. The one that everyone thinks of is the SEC and their ability to use the Xbrl data to evaluate companies and to evaluate their financial disclosures. But that doesn't mean that filers who spend so much time tagging their Xbrl documents can't take advantage of that information as well. And I think it's a very useful thing for filers because it can help them in a number of different ways. I spend a lot of time checking Xbrl documents for accuracy, for completeness, and for consistency with financial statements. I don't spend as much time using the data, but I have had some opportunities to spend time with companies to help them understand what data is available to them, what they can do with it, and how it can help them in three ways. The first way is performing research on disclosures. The secondly, obtain information on the industry and their particular peers or targets, or comparing themselves to peers in a variety of different ways, perhaps looking at ratios, key measurements, or other statistics. What I'd like to do for the next 15 minutes or so is talk about some high-level ways that you as filers can take advantage of the Xbrl data that is out there using currently available tools and using steps that today will save you time, effort, hopefully improve the accuracy of your financial statements, and hopefully as well help you learn a little bit more about Xbrl so that when you tag your documents, you have the ability to understand the best possible tagging from the viewpoint or from the eye of the consumer of your data. With that, we're going to move on to the next slide. And one of the first things that I had said is obtaining information about disclosures. This slide deck, as we're going through it, is going to go kind of from easiest to more complicated searches. One of the simplest things that you, as a user of Xbrl data, and again, I said user, not necessarily as a filer right now, but put the other hat on, put the user hat on. What can you do to help your own financial statements, your own company, and your own peers in the financial reporting department? Say, for example, you had a new disclosure that you were going to make this quarter. Perhaps you had an acquisition, perhaps you had a restructuring, perhaps you have a new disclosure that was not previously applicable to you, but is today. One of the things that you could do is to see how other companies are reporting that particular disclosure, what they're saying, how they're saying it, what particular facts they're disclosing, and which elements from the US GAAP taxonomy they're using, and which they might have had to extend. I remember the old days with the Trends and Technique books, and oftentimes I would be asked, well, how do we do a particular disclosure? And in the absence of going to the FASB guidance or to the SEC guidance, I would go to Trends and Techniques and see what other companies were doing, and it might take me hours or days to go through and find a comparable example. Well, today, by searching for particular elements, you can very easily see what other companies have used that element for and what type of disclosure they may have made. Let's take an example here, and in this particular example, I'm using Xbrl US's consistency suite. And I can mine the data that is out there. I can mine the 10Qs and the 10Ks that have been submitted to the SEC over the past 4 years and look for other companies that might have used that particular accounting concept. So say, for example, I was going to look at something that involved restructuring charge. What I could conceivably do is go to Xbrl US's consistency suite, and there are other tools that do this as well. I'm just using this as an example. And I could search on the tag restructuring charge or restructuring costs. What I'm going to do on the next slide is show you how I can use the consistency suite to, in this case, look for goodwill loss or goodwill impairment. So what I've done here is in the consistency suite, I've clicked on advanced filter, and I've said that I'd like to use the concept name by clicking on the concept tab and then cutting and pasting goodwill impairment lost into the taxonomy concept box just underneath on the left-hand side there. By then selecting that as the element that I would like to search on or the concept that I would like to search on, I'm able to then advance to the next screen, which will give me a list of all of the 10Ks or 10Qs that have used or included the element or concept goodwill impairment loss. And by looking at this, I can do a couple of things. I can either scroll through this list to see if there's a company that I may want to research further. I can click in the right-hand column where it says Edgar and either take myself exactly to the rendering where that goodwill impairment loss is disclosed. I can download the Xbrl instance document and look at it in a separate viewer, or I can download it into Excel and look at their particular document. What I could also do is click on the Excel icon on the top right-hand side of that screen. What this allows me to do is I can prepare or I can identify examples of how companies have recorded a goodwill impairment loss. And in flipping through those examples, I may see how other companies have chosen to disclose it, what particular disclosures they may have made, and what particular elements from the US GAAP taxonomy or extensions they might have created. Now that may sound like plagiarism. Well, one of the things that actually allows us to do is to improve the quality of the data by tagging consistently with other companies. However, it's always important to know that you really want to disclose that what is required by the accounting guidelines and by the SEC. This is helpful as an example of what other companies are doing and how, in under a minute, you can find a list of 3,711 occurrences where the element goodwill impairment loss was used, and very quickly, by clicking through on the right-hand side, go directly to that 10Q footnote or to that 10K disclosure and see what was disclosed and how it was disclosed. That's one particular high-power, high-value use of Xbrl. Moving on to the next slide, one of the things that I had mentioned was it could allow you to obtain information on industry and targets. I had a company who came to me and said, one of the things we want to find out is what do companies out there use for depreciable life for certain types of computer equipment. We'd like to know whether it's 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, so that A, we have an idea how quickly computer equipment is turning over in the industry. And this is one very quickly collect that data using Xbrl. Again, in the old days, you might want to take 10 or 20 printed copies of annual reports and flip through them, or download 10 or 20 HTML documents from the SEC website and flip through them to see what companies might be using. And that might give you a subset of the population and show you what a couple of companies might be doing. In this particular case, I am again able to use the Xbrl US Consistency Suite. And what I'd like to do here is to use this to look at values reported by filing. What I'm able to do using the Consistency Suite here is I'm able to select a variety of concepts and then narrow to what I'm specifically looking for. So in this particular case, I've selected accounting concept, property, plant, and equipment, useful life. I've added a dimensional member for computer equipment, and I've also added the range or the members of minimum and maximum on the range axis. In this case, what it allowed me to do was to get an Excel spreadsheet, and for all the companies that had used the element property, plant, and equipment, useful life, I was able to get their values from their individual 10Qs and 10Ks, and those that had designated computer equipment and a life for the computer equipment, I was able to identify the minimum life and the maximum life used for depreciating them. This information could then be helpful to a company so that they could then decide most companies or purchasers of computer equipment depreciate them over a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 5. This is one particular example. What else might you be able to do if you were looking at the population of filers and wanted to grasp some of that data? So one of the things you might want to consider is to say, let me find anybody who has R&D expense in excess of a certain dollar amount. Or would I be interested in finding out, are there companies out there who may have gross margin that is negative? And how do they talk about that in their MD&A? Is there anyone out there with an extremely unusual tax rate? And by looking at that tax rate, can I see how they might have described it in their footnote or in their filings? And it allows you to play these, if you want to call them, research or what-if games. Are there companies out there in a similar situation to me, or are there companies that might have some extremely unusual circumstance that I could search on? And then that then allows me to gather data about the industry and about specific reporting guidelines. Moving on to another example, and one that I just used, was companies that have unusual tax rates. Xbrl US, a variety of tools available. One of the tools available, and they publish certain types of data, is from their website, xbrl.us. On the right-hand side, under Tools and Data, you're able to look for some typical or some unusual data representation. And one of the things that Xbrl US has done has created a table of companies and has included some items such as their gross margin, their pre-tax income, their tax amount, and their after-tax. And they're then able to plot that data. So while this chart may look very unusual, by going to the bottom of the chart in the table, you're able to identify some companies that may have an unusual tax situation. And that may be useful in a couple of different ways. A, understanding what's going on in your industry. B, understanding how your company may be evaluated against its peers. Understanding or identifying companies that meet some unique criteria who may be, say, for example, a good target for some of the sales you may want to involve them in. If, say, for example, you were selling a tax product or an investment product. So there are a variety of different things that you can do with this Xbrl data very quickly and very easily that heretofore was unavailable because you would have to funnel through a mountain of paper. So what we're trying to do is to show you that this data is available today. There are tools available today, and that this information is there for your using. I've given you a couple of easy examples, one to help you with some disclosures, two to talk about the industry a little bit, three to look at some unusual situations. And again, there are a variety of tools out there. Some of the tools that are available you can find on the Xbrl US website, and they include CalcBench, Sector 3, Decision Cloud, Analyst, FinApp. These are all either Excel modules or standalone programs that will help you mine the data that is in the Xbrl US database, in the SEC's IDEA database, and help you evaluate some of that information. Why might you want to do this? I've worked with a couple of companies, and in one case, one of them said, you know, our investor relations group has all these spreadsheets that they end up updating every quarter to compare us to some of our peers. We also have a whole bunch of internal spreadsheets that we use in our marketing group and in our financial reporting group, and even in internal audit, that help benchmark us against our peers. And we spend a lot of time every quarter updating these documents. And we don't always have the latest and greatest financial information, so sometimes, you know, different documents have different numbers in them. The thing about Xbrl is because you can write the formula to go and search for other companies, because you can have it automatically update from 10Qs and 10Ks, the time needed to assemble some of these analyses and some of these documents should decrease considerably. The accuracy will hopefully increase because you're not retyping information. And at the same time, you're always making sure you're using the latest and greatest information and that all the documents are up to speed. So one of the things that we encourage companies to do is to look at what data needs are within your company. And it doesn't necessarily need to be just in your financial reporting department, but in other departments as well. And there are ways that you could take this data and use it to create analyses more accurately, more timely, and with less manual effort. There are ways that you could use this data to kind of, you know, evaluate options or opportunities that might be out there for you. One of the ones that I typically see and that I have used a few times is CalcBench. And for the second half of this presentation, we're going to take you through some concrete examples of what can be done with CalcBench and how you might be able to use that to mine this data that is available for you. As we go on to the next slide, I'm going to leave you with a couple of other items. I talked to one particular company, and one of the things that they wanted to do was to say, how do I compare to my peers? And I really have not had an easy way to do this in the past. But using one of these tools, could I possibly do the following? Could I create an Excel spreadsheet that might have some metrics defined in it, and then on a periodic basis, just click the refresh button and have it update these metrics so then I can then hand it out to my various product managers and say, you know, how do we stack up to our peers? Are we doing better? Are we doing worse? Where do we stand in the marketplace from a competitive advantage? So maybe we could define some key financial metrics, say, for example, allowance for credit losses, gross financing revenue, maybe operating income or net income. And these are all US GAAP tags that I can go to one of these tools and either type it in, cut and paste it in, or select it from a drop-down, which then allows me to pick that particular disclosure by the other companies. Or what I'm able to do is perhaps do some calculations. So using particular standard GAAP tags, I'm allowed to retrieve the allowance, retrieve the beginning receivables, the ending receivables, perhaps retrieve the net charge-off amount, and to create some ratios. And again, very simple, very easy to do in Excel. You know, one cell divided by another, and that cell is pulling data from the Xbrl database, either the SEC's instance or Xbrl US's, or a vendor. There are a number of third-party vendors who have that information available, who are making tools available, and could potentially assist you with your use of the Xbrl information. So here on these two slides, you've seen a couple of examples of where we're pulling directly data, or where we're pulling data and then somehow manipulating it to get the calculations that we particularly need. This is something that is available to us today that heretofore has been very complex and very difficult to get because it involved a lot of manual effort. Today, Xbrl is here to do that heavy lifting for us. So moving on, in summary, before I turn it over to Pranav, tools and methodologies exist today. This is not a dream that someday we might be able to do it. The tools are there. I've shown you a couple of slides that have that information. The methodologies are there. They're very simple. A lot of these can be done simply in Excel spreadsheets. The data is available through a number of sources, if not through Xbrl US, through some of the very big data warehouse companies that are making the data warehouses available, or are able to run these reports and tools for you at a cost that was lower than what might have been available in the past, with more data points available. Companies now have the power to mine the Xbrl data that is not just in the hands of the SEC. It's available to each and every one of you, and it's available to help you do your jobs faster, better, and smarter. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Pranav.
Joe, thanks very much. Pranav Guy is now going to walk us through a more detailed example and actually show us one of the tools online. So Pranav, I know you need to pull up your own screen, so it'll just take us a second to do that. And actually, while Pranav is pulling up his screen, I apologize, but we did have a couple of questions. And one question is about slides, and we will be sending out tomorrow the replay for the program, and then also giving you an option to purchase the slides as well. So we'll be sending that out. And then we also had a question about how are we able to get to this search tool? Is it within the SEC website? And Joe, I think that the only tool that you demonstrated was the Xbrl Consistency Suite. And this is a component of a product that's available from Xbrl US. So I'm going to be sending out an email tomorrow with information on the various tools that we'll talk about, along with links to go off to the tools so that you can look into them more in depth on your own. So that's it for questions. And actually that's it for those questions. But I also have some poll questions that I have to ask as part of our CPE. So bear with me just for a second here. And I'm going to ask you to take your first poll question. So the first question we have is, how can filers use tag data? And so to respond to this, just click on the screen, click on the button for the answer that is most appropriate for you, that you feel is most appropriate. And then click on, finish survey. Okay, great, thank you. So I'm going to close that survey, and we're going to give you one more question. Okay, this next question is, what is your level of Xbrl expertise? So here you can respond, it's 1 year or less, between 1 and 3 years, or more than 3 years. Okay, so just click on the button next to each response to tell us what you think. Please answer the responses quickly. Your CPE depends on capturing your participation in the program today. Okay, so we're going to end the voting on that one. And now we're actually going to turn it back over to Pranav. And sorry about that, Pranav, for interrupting you with the poll questions. But we're going to turn it back over to you if you want to share your desktop again, and we'll start your demonstration.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So first, thanks for having me today. My name is Pranav Guy. I co-founded CalcBench a couple of years ago. For those not familiar with the platform, I'll just give you a very brief overview of the platform. You can, go to our website, calcbench.com, which is just up here, and even sign up for a free trial if you want. We welcome that. So just as background, we cover the entire U.S. filing universe, and it's all due to hard work from people like you that are all on this call. There are about somewhere in the neighborhood of about 9,000 companies in our database today. We have about 60 million data points. The system is backed up nightly. It's a cloud-based system. And it's really, the goal here is to get the information into the hands of end users as quickly as possible. So with that in mind, I'm just really going to dive in and show you how somebody could use this, how somebody does use this tool. So just one other piece of background, we have a number of different sort of views of the world with respect to the tool. And what we offer are sort of a company in detail view where you can look across a single company and look at all of their statements, face financials, as well as footnotes. You can also look at groups of companies in a single shot. We call that benchmarking. Other people call it screening. It's effectively that kind of tool where you can sort of slice and dice data and look across. And I'll be showing you demos of each one of these things. You can look at footnotes within and across companies. And we're really proud of the work there, and I think it's pretty useful. And we've got some filing analytics as well. So one of Joe's examples that he talked about was the allowance for credit losses on one of his slides. And I thought we'd just sort of let, make the rubber hit the road with that particular example. So let's go look at that. And what I'll do here is I log in and I will look at JP Morgan. And it comes up rather quickly. And right here is the companies in detail page right here for JP Morgan. And you can have many companies across the top. You can just simply add Bank of America here if you wanted to, Citigroup, etc., and they would all scroll across the top. And then you can switch your time period here from annual to quarterly, pick the particular statement that you want to look at, etc., etc. So what you see here is the last 4 years of income statement from JP Morgan. And in particular, we were looking at the allowance for credit losses, which is right here, the provision for credit losses. And if you mouse over the line item, you'll see there that's in the tooltip. The Xbrl tag is a provision for loan, lease, and other losses. So right there, you know what you're looking for. So what would I do with this information? Well, so I can, do something like I can look at JP Morgan's chart of this number. But really what I want to do is perhaps, or one use case might be to look across all of the peers and look for this line item. So I might go to what we call our benchmarking tool. That was a sort of the screening tool I alluded to before. I click on that. And I start by, the first step is to choose a data set. I'll pick right here. I'll find all peers for JP Morgan. And now I've entered sort of my interactive work environment. And this is this is comparable to an interactive spreadsheet environment. And all of this, by the way, you can export all of these things directly down into an Excel spreadsheet if you want to. So right here, we give you a few data points to sort of play with, and you can sort them. And there's our good friend at the top. You can also add data points by going to Explore. And you see here, these are some of the items that are available. There's some reference data available to you. There are income statement items. There are balance sheet items and cash flow statement items. You can also, if you are so bold, actually start typing in an Xbrl tag. Now we knew what the tag was that we were looking for from the prior page. We could actually just type it in here and it would auto-complete. But in this case, I will show you that we actually have the provision for loan losses for financial companies is a data point that we've normalized. So we can just click it there, and it shows up here in this column. And again, you know, do some sorting. And there's our $225 million line item from JP Morgan. And you can double click on the item, as I just did. And what it'll do is it'll actually bring you, it'll do what we call a trace, and it'll bring you to the little footnote item. This isn't the best way to view this, but it's a way. So it links it back to the actual footnote disclosure. And you can, you know, if you so chose, you could read through this, or we'll look at the footnote tool later, and I can show you how that works. So right now, we've got the provision for loan losses up on our screen across the entire universe. You can even chart it if you want across the universe. You can also do things like create your own formulas. Now remember, there are many, many items we can pick from. I'm just picking one here, and you can look at, you can simply create something where, and this is a bit of a nonsensical formula, but the idea should be very clear to you. If you are looking to deflate this item by revenue, you would pick by pointing and clicking across the top the percent. You can call it deflated loan loss reserve. Oops. Say OK, and there's a number. There you go. There's some crazy stuff in here, but that's the idea. So again, if you want to sort by assets, and you'll see what you've got there. So again, the examples are there for you to go and play with, look at on your own, etc. So what I'm going to do now is to just switch gears a little bit and take you through to our footnote query tool. Oh, and by the way, I'm sorry, I should have shown you this before, but another thing you could do, again, to play around a little before I go to the footnote query tool. If you wanted to compare the loan loss reserves to the actual loans, you know, the total loans receivable, you just add that. That might have actually been an even better example to show you to do the ratio of this, the provision for loan losses to loan receivable. So we could just simply, you know, the way it's the same idea, you could that divided by that. Okay, same idea. And sort. So you can then take this, drop it down to an Excel spreadsheet, and there it is. Whoops. Okay. And now, just very quickly, I'll take you through our footnote query tool and show you what we can do there. So the way that works is simply you click on the footnotes query here, and it'll come up. I'm also going to switch industries a little bit to show you some other things. But same idea here. If you were looking at, let's just look at some semiconductor firms. We have what we call a grid view, which is sort of a very top level view of footnotes. And you can click on that, and what it's going to do is it's going to bring up a matrix of the SIC code 3674, which is here, the companies across the top, the disclosures in the rows going down. And if you see the yes, it means that this company, in this case Altera, has the disclosure for which we're the accounting policy disclosure. And so if you wanted to look at, let's say, for example, Altera's inventory disclosure, you just kind of go over here, click yes, and there it is. Now, this could be useful, but there's even more stuff that you can do. Of course, you can export this disclosure if you want. We also let you do something kind of neat here. If you wanted to look at the work in process inventory or the finished goods inventory, you see where it says double click any number for more detail? This is where the joining of tools becomes sort of powerful. And if I were to, I can actually double click on that number, and you see in the lower part of the screen there, it actually brings up the work in process inventory number. And you can actually click on screen here. It also gives you the tag, by the way, the tag, the value, the unit of measurement, etc. I can actually click on screen, and it'll bring the history of that item to my screen for each quarter that we have that data. If you wanted to, you could get the whole peer group and drop it to an Excel spreadsheet right there by simply clicking on that radio button, hitting Excel. It would take some time to calculate, which I'm not going to do right now, but it would then drop it to your desktop, and you'd have that as well. So now what you really have is this tag, the inventory work in process net of reserves. You can actually just copy that tag, flip back to the benchmarker, you can actually drop that tag in there, and there you go. So now you have this for the entire industry. Now, if you wanted to do something a little bit, we just introduced something unique with respect to this. You could use this tool to look for tags, or you could just say something like, well, you know, I just want to look for inventory and see what happens. And all of a sudden, it's smart enough to pick up the fact that you may want raw materials, work in process, finished goods. So you don't actually have to do that tag thing that I just did. I just wanted to show you how that worked. You can actually, you know, let's look at raw materials across the group. And there you go, you've got the raw materials inventory. And here, again, the same idea, you can pull it up, and you get the Xbrl tag there, you get the value, and it takes you down into the note for you. So these are some of the things we've built. I can take you through any of these, but we have a bunch of ratios that we've built sort of for people to look at. If you wanted to look at profit margins, if you wanted to look at day sales outstanding, we've got all of these things built. You may want to do something like say, hey guys, how did you calculate day sales outstanding? And we're very transparent at CalcBench. What we try to do is to tell people, hey, look, this is how you do it. You simply double click on the number, and it'll tell you the formula that we use. And the idea here, again, is that if you wanted to create your own formula using this little insert a formula column, you're welcome to do that if you either disagree with our formula or want to just simply create your own. And there's an interactive help button that if you click on that, it'll show you through the tooltips, you know, how to use these tools. So you can do things like filter the results by saying, you know, I only want to look at companies with revenue greater than, let's say, $10 million. Run the filter, and it would screen out smaller companies. So it's meant to be just a very, very simple to use logical tool. And with that, I'll stop and turn it back over to Michelle.
Pranav, thank you very much. That was great. We do have a question for you. Within CalcBench, can you query and benchmark your Xbrl tags against all companies in your peer group?
So you'd actually want to do sort of a frequency analysis of your tag selections versus others? Is that sort of, I mean, if the person wants to contact me directly, the answer is it's something that can be done. We haven't exposed it on a mass scale yet. So it's an interesting point for future development. But we do have all of the tags, and we have that capability. At this point, we haven't done that.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's basically they want to see what tags they're using versus what tags their peers are using within, you know, for similar concepts. And sometimes
I'll if whoever asked that question wants to just contact us directly, we can take that offline and talk to you a little bit about that. We're happy to do that.
Okay, great. And I can prompt. Do you want to give your email address? Do you feel comfortable doing that, or do you want to just direct people to?
No, absolutely. It's Pranav, Pranav, at calcbench.com. Couldn't be easier. Or if you prefer, just to send it to us at calcbench.com. That would be fine as well. It'll get to me, or it'll get to Alex, one of us.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Pranav, thanks very much. We're going to go into some poll questions now. So hang on a second while I bring up some polls. Okay, and our next poll question is, how do you currently use Xbrl data in your own analysis? And again, as we did last time, just click on the button next to the chosen response. And if you can do this quickly, and again, your CPE credit is really based on getting your response to these questions. Okay, so the section, we still have a few more people that could respond to this. How do you currently use Xbrl data in your own analysis? To do pure analysis, to conduct historical analysis, or you don't use Xbrl formatted data in your own analysis at this stage? Because if we don't get people's responses, we cannot provide CPE credit. Okay, I'm going to end the voting on that one. And oops, looks like a couple more people jumping in. Okay, so we'll end the voting and close out that survey. And we have another poll question we're going to take. And this question is, what advantage do Xbrl formatted corporate filings have over traditional HTML filing? And again, please click on the buttons next to the answer you choose. And then when you're finished, click on the Finish Survey button. So your choices are easier to extract and more timely, available for more companies than traditional HTML, or provides more data than traditional HTML filings. Okay, and don't forget to click on your response, but then also click Finish Survey, because that will register your answer. Okay. All right, we're going to move on and end the voting here. Okay, and we're going to go back to our slides. And then what I'd like to do next is just very briefly build on what Joe and Pranav were explaining, and they provided you with a couple of tools that they felt were particularly useful. And I wanted to show you some other tools, really in part to show you that there are other tools available and to give you ideas of places to go, and also to let you know that lots of different tool providers are out there using your Xbrl data. And so it's definitely, you know, your Xbrl corporate data is definitely getting out there and being used in very actively. This first tool that I'm showing you here is called Rank and Filed. Rankandfile.com, it's a tool, it gathers data from Edgar, it indexes the data, and then it puts it into formats that are really meant to help investors do research, discover companies on their own. This site was created by a former SEC staff person. She actually stated that she was disappointed that the SEC didn't make the Xbrl data more easily available. And on her website, she said that she developed this in 6 months after she started Googling how to build a website. And she really built it to draw attention to the fact that using the Xbrl data is really pretty easy. So I use Rank and File myself because I do research on public companies and on mutual funds. And this screenshot just shows historical filings by a company called Cubis Pharmaceuticals. You can get data like ownership, information, financials, MD&A, other types of information on this site, information on the C-suite for the company. And while this may not seem like unusual information to find or information that's difficult to find, the most important takeaway I think here is that the data is available a lot faster and a lot cheaper because it's pulled directly from your Xbrl filing. And the data is available for all public companies, not just large or mid-cap companies. You find a lot of the large data providers, they only provide data on large cap companies or potentially mid-cap companies. But with Xbrl, every company has kind of gets it's a fair turn. This next screenshot, also from Rank and File, just shows mutual funds. And this just shows the Vanguard Explorer Fund. And again, anyone can easily have access to information on thousands and thousands of mutual funds. Any fund that has to file to the SEC, and that's through this particular website. Okay. The second tool that I want to mention is from a company called FinDynamics, and they have a 2-week trial available, and then they follow a subscription model, so you can check them out and see if you're interested. And the tool features an Excel plugin that allows you to extract data on specific companies. You can do time series analysis, you could do company comparisons, you can screen through companies, you can browse through corporate footnotes. So there's lots of different things that you can do with this particular tool, and that's what I have up here that you can see. This is just a company comparison looking at, I think I had Walmart, Target, and Costco. And it took me literally seconds to do this, and it's the most recent filings, and that filing may have happened the morning that I pulled the data. So it's really fast and very quickly available. And they make data available that is as reported data and also normalized data. So those are the two tools that I wanted to show in more detail. I just wanted to mention some other tools that you may want to take a look at. There's a company called ThinkNum that provides analytical models that you can use to look for investment ideas. And it also gives you the ability to create your own analytical models within their web space. So it's kind of a cool, interesting idea. Tagnify is another company that provides access to an API of corporate data. So that's another source of corporate financial data that is drawing from the Xbrl. And Logica is an offering from Aperba Technologies that provides company performance analytics, and it does some very interesting data visualization. So that's another one that you might want to check out. So this just gives you a sense for the different kinds of tools and products on the market. And what we've shown you today is, some of the relatively new providers. CalcBench is actually probably getting up there and becoming one of the older providers. But there are lots of the big standard data providers, names that we've all heard of, like Standard & Poor's, Capital IQ, Thomson Reuters, SNL Financial. A lot of these very big legacy data providers are also using Xbrl corporate data. So I think it's interesting to see that there are lots of very nimble new players coming in, like CalcBench and ThinkNum and Tagnify. But now a lot of interesting that the legacy providers are kind of catching up and beginning to consume more Xbrl data as well. And not just Xbrl data in the US, but they're bringing in data from Japan in Xbrl format and from China and other countries around the world. So it's becoming quite common now. And even though if you speak to your shareholders or a sell-side analyst that covers you, they may say, oh, we don't know anything about your Xbrl data. They do, they're using it, but they may be using it through a source where it's just transparent to them. We've got a couple of other questions that I wanted to ask. And this is a question for you, Pranav. The question is, Pranav, can you look up disclosure language in CalcBench? It's a number folks tool. Sounds like you look up
So
text, I guess, in Calcbench.
yes, you can. The short of it is you can. I didn't have a chance to show you all because I want to keep it short. But in fact, the detail page that I showed you in the beginning has sort of over to the right both detail tag numeric footnotes as well as text, and you can use that. And then the grid view that I showed you with respect to the semiconductors, where we looked at Altera's inventory note, you can also examine text that way, and you can do it in that tool across groups of companies. So you can get sort of 10 disclosures sort of simultaneously. Obviously, it'll be on one screen, but you know, 10, 20, 30 disclosures at the same time.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to one more poll question for our CPE. So if you bear with me a minute here. Okay, our poll question is, who currently uses Xbrl formatted corporate data? Is it investors, the media, analysts, regulators, or would you say all of the above? And again, to respond, just click on the answer of choice and hit finish survey, and then that will help you register your vote. Okay, so if you can just finish up your responses, because I'm going to need to end voting in a minute here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the voting. All right, we'll close out that survey. And then I just have a couple of additional slides to go through. I just wanted to talk to, first of all, I want to thank Pranav Guy from Calcbench and Joe Logica from KPMG for giving us a really good presentation and some great insights into how to use Xbrl data and also who's using it, which I think is interesting for everyone. And then I also want to talk about some other educational programs that we have. Everybody knows about our free webinars. We've got a bunch more coming up in the coming weeks, and so I welcome you all to attend those. We also have our national conference, which is coming up September 15th through 17th in Bellevue, Washington. And that's actually on the screen here. If you look at the second point, and I'm skipping around a little bit here. But the national conference is going to be a little over 2 days of hands-on best practice training. We're going to get into uses of corporate data as well as training on creating the best data. We're going to have keynotes from Microsoft, from Ignition Partners. We have early registration rates, which are in place through mid-July. And you can find out more about the conference by going to conference.xbrl.us. And for that conference, I want to thank our sponsors, PwC, Deloitte, DataTrax, the AICPA, and many others for supporting us and help make that event possible. I also wanted to mention the first bullet point that you see on the slide, the Xbrl Consistency Suite. And Joe Logica in his presentation referenced this tool quite a bit. It's a tool that really has several different components. One, the primary component is a tool to identify and help resolve data quality errors. But a second component of that tool is actually access to a database, and that is the database that you were shown in Joe's slides. That gives you access to all of the company filings, so that you can pull their Xbrl data, both text as well as numeric data, and be able to serve that up and do all kinds of analysis with it. And right now, for those people who registered for today's event, we're offering a special discount of $500 off the regular price, and that offer expires July 19th. The next thing that I wanted to speak about briefly in terms of educational programs is the Xbrl US GAAP Certificate Program. This is an online certificate program that provides about 40 hours of CPE credit, and it was developed jointly with the AICPA. This is a very comprehensive program, and we're offering a 10% discount for today's registrants. And again, that offer expires on July 19th as well. So that's 10% off the standard price. Covered in the certificate program is very comprehensive, and it's a really good add-on to going to an event or attending a training workshop, because it gives you really the breadth of information about Xbrl. So it covers fundamentals, which has modules like understanding the US GAAP taxonomy, creating an instance document, building a extension. It also includes statements, cash flow, OCI, and balance sheet. And it includes, many individual disclosures, like how to, accurately and effectively tag the goodwill disclosure, earnings per share, business combinations, lots of different disclosures that we felt were relevant for most organizations. So with that covers what we wanted to present to you today. Again, thanks to Joe and Prana for all of their insights. Tomorrow we will send out the replay as well as more information about the special offers to you. And also we'll send you a link to CalcBench so that you can see, take a deeper dive into what's available through CalcBench and hopefully learn more about some of the different tools that are available. Thanks very much, and we hope to see you on one of our next webinars.